Very kind, loving, and understanding, Diane's companion rarely spoke much. On the return trip, Diane was talkative, her earlier anxiety having subsided. They headed to Tony's house where Diane stayed overnight, sending a quick text to her friends to assure them she was fine and to check on them. They had met up and gone to a movie together. On Sunday morning, after breakfast, they attended church where they unexpectedly ran into Alice and Faith just as they were entering. Post-service, Faith invited them over for lunch. After a leisurely lunch, they enjoyed a conversation before each went back to their respective homes. At home, Diane pondered whether to introduce Tony to her parents and children, unsure how her children would react. By Tuesday, she decided to go ahead. She called her mom, revealing that she had been seeing someone for a few months and wanted to introduce him. Her mother, who had often urged Diane to find a good man and marry, was delighted. Overhearing the conversation, her father took the phone to express his approval and suggested that they arrange a visit for any upcoming Saturday, provided they gave some advance notice. With her parents' blessing, Diane called Tony to inquire about his plans for the upcoming Saturday. Although he considered playing golf, he quickly agreed that meeting her parents was more important, saying, "Golf can wait." They settled on visiting her parents in Muthaiga the following Saturday. Diane shared the news with Faith and Alice, who were all excited. However, Diane then faced the dilemma of how and when to tell her children. She decided to inform them during her next school visit in 2 weeks, planning to do so alone. The following visit, she intended to bring Tony along. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear, and Tony, ever the punctual gentleman, whisked Diane away as planned. They made a strategic pit stop at Sarit Center to pick up some essentials, because one does not simply arrive at one's parents' house empty-handed. The drive to Muthaiga was as smooth as their shopping, no traffic jams or roadside dramas to speak of. They arrived at Diane's childhood home at the fashionably precise time of 1:30 p.m., welcomed by the formidable sight of a large brown gate guarded by not one, but 2, stoic security guards. As the gate swung open, it revealed a grand house that seemed to be a modern tribute to traditional Gikuyu architecture, right down to the cone-shaped roofs mimicking the old huts. Diane's mom, the undisputed queen of botany, had turned the place into a floral paradise, with blooms bursting in every conceivable nook. The driveway was a meticulously laid tapestry of red paving stones, leading to a statue-inspired roundabout featuring a woman eternally pouring water from her pot. Greeting them at the entrance were Diane's parents, standing proudly by the mammoth doors imported from Lamu, a touch of coastal grandeur in the heart of Muthaiga. After introductions that felt more like red carpet moments, the house help swooped in to whisk away their goodies. Inside, the house boasted a landing that doubled as a personal hall of fame. Just a few steps down led them into a living room that could easily be mistaken for an Italian showroom, complete with a grand piano for impromptu serenades. The room was a light-flooded sanctuary, thanks to expansive windows, and featured curtains that Diane's mom had crafted, inspired by a glossy magazine spread. The patriarch, not one to miss a beat, offered wine all around, although Diane's mom opted for fruit juice, thanks to doctor's orders. Post some delightful small talk, they progressed to the dining room where a marble table awaited. Dinner was a feast so sumptuous they stopped eating only because their stomachs waved white flags. Post-dinner, Diane's dad took Tony for a stroll around the property, transitioning from casual host to tour guide. They explored the extensive grounds, from chickens clucking in the yard to cows grazing serenely, and even a vegetable garden that could rival any organic market. A peek into the greenhouse and a brief farm-to-table discourse later, they returned to find the ladies deep in conversation. In a move that signaled his approval, Diane's dad brought out the single malt whiskey, a treat not just anyone is privy to. Diane sensed her dad's fondness for Tony, especially as he handed over the whiskey like a ceremonial baton. She reassured Tony to enjoy his drink as she would take the wheel home. Eventually, they decided to head out, laden with garden-fresh vegetables and not one, but 2 chickens, prepped and ready for the freezer. Diane, taking no chances with Tony's newfound spirit for single malt, drove them back. They unloaded at Tony's, and no sooner had they settled than a friend called, inviting them over for drinks. Quick-thinking Diane volunteered to whip up some ugali and roast potatoes to complement the roast meat, saving their host from kitchen duties. They spent the rest of the night chatting, dancing, and enjoying music until the early hours of 4 a.m. On Sunday, Tony and Diane indulged in the luxury of a late start, rolling out of bed at 11 a.m. for a leisurely breakfast. A quick trip to Westlands was in order since Tony needed a few things, after which she dropped Diane home. They shared a cozy cuddle before Tony headed out, leaving Diane to catch up with Faith and Alice over the phone before she tackled dinner preparations. Monday hit Diane like a whirlwind. She barely knew if she was coming or going. Amid the chaos, she managed brief phone chats with the girls, both equally swamped. Wednesday evening saw Tony over at Diane's for dinner, where she announced her upcoming school visit to see the kids. "I'll tell the kids about us," Diane declared post-dinner. Tony reassured her, mentioning he also planned to open up to his daughters about their relationship. Dinner on Friday in Westlands wrapped up early. Diane had a few things to pack for the kids, not forgetting to marinate the chicken to make Saturday morning a breeze. Speaking of Saturday, it turned into a masterclass in efficiency as Alice suggested carpooling. Post-cooking, Alice helped Diane load up the car, and they took turns behind the wheel. Arriving early, they found a perfect spot thanks to the kids. After feasting, Diane gingerly broached the topic of Tony. Despite a rocky start with her delivery, the kids' reaction was surprisingly positive. "Of course, that would be brilliant," JB exclaimed, adding, "You need some company." "It's about time, Mom," Sheila chimed in, encouraging her mother to take the plunge but proceed with caution. Relieved and amused, Diane promised to bring Tony's photo next visit, maybe even Tony himself. The ensuing laughter and hugs indicated clear skies ahead. As the day progressed, the kids shared updates about their musical exploits and school leadership roles, blending the end-of-year play with JB's band's performances. Time flew, and soon it was time for the moms to head out, leaving behind hugs and promises of future visits. On the drive back, Diane and Alice phoned Faith to catch up on her paint-splattered team-building adventure, laughing over her tales of aches and bruises. Once home, refreshed and in casual wear, Diane headed to Tony's. Greeted by the aromas of dinner cooking, she was quickly reminded of their little domestic arrangement. At his place, she relaxes; at hers, she cooks unless he opts to take over. Dinner passed in a blur of shared stories and soft chuckles. Diane filled Tony in on the kids' enthusiastic endorsement of him, and his face lit up with the idea of meeting them. After dinner, their evening dissolved into a cozy tangle on the couch, with Tony playfully stirring up a bit of trouble, much to Diane's delight. On Friday, Tony and Diane decided to catch a flick at the cinema, having not indulged in the simple pleasure of a movie night for ages. They shared a gargantuan bucket of popcorn while watching the latest blockbuster. Post-movie, they opted for a fancy dinner, which turned out to be an epic culinary misadventure. They arrived at a restaurant that initially seemed promising but were soon parked at the bar, supposedly waiting for a table. Despite their preference for fruit juice over alcohol, they noticed other couples arriving after them and being seated immediately. Suspicious, Alice whipped out her phone and started a covert operation, questioning the newcomers about reservations, which they hadn't made. When they confronted the waiter, he wove a tale of phantom bookings. Diane repeated the question for clarity, only to receive the same dubious answer. They then unleashed their recorded evidence, but the waiter clammed up. Another waiter tried to defuse the situation but blundered horribly by suggesting that working women weren't welcome in the dining area. "What do you mean, working women?" Diane pressed, only to be shocked by his clarification that they suspected them of being prostitutes. Outraged but composed, Diane demanded the manager, who echoed the absurd claim. With theatrical flair, the women presented their business cards and warned of their recorded ordeal going public. Trying to salvage his sinking ship, the manager stuttered apologies, but the ladies declared their appetite and patience ruined, promising to take their business where it was valued. Faith dramatically withheld a tip, telling them, "Seems our money's too tainted for you." Outside, they strategized their next move when a sympathetic fellow diner offered to amplify their story via his blog. Frustrated and no longer in the mood for dining out, they retreated to Faith's place for a makeshift dinner. En route, Diane recounted the saga to Tony, who was furious, especially since the restaurant owner was an old university mate. The incident escalated as Alice broadcasted the video online, causing an instant stir on social media. They capped off the night with a comedy film and a glass of wine to soothe their nerves. By morning, the video was viral in Nairobi, trending on Twitter. Tony suggested a meetup to discuss the fallout. Simultaneously, Robert and Brian, having seen the footage, rallied for a collective response. The group convened that afternoon, plotting their next move. Tony diplomatically contacted the owner, Captain, who was clueless about his staff's actions and promised an investigation. Meanwhile, the video buzzed incessantly on their phones as Nairobi buzzed about their experience. After a Sunday dinner, Captain reported back on his findings, marking a minor victory in their unexpected battle against discrimination. He said, "I'd been to the restaurant, chatted up the staff, and even had a word with my brother. At first, he played innocent, but then I pulled out the footage. After more sleuthing with the staff, it seems everyone had their own version of a soap opera script. Some claimed the place was a hotspot for single ladies trying to snag a lonely Caucasian customer, while others griped about Africans not tipping. When he pressed them about who okayed this bizarre customer service strategy, they shrugged it off. Then, tossing in a plot twist, they admitted his brother was in on it. He then turned into the fairness police, reminding them about the service charge already included in their bills, so, tip or no tip, they weren't going home empty-handed. Plus, he added, tips are like gold stars at kindergarten, you only get them if you play nice and share your toys, metaphorically speaking. His brother, meanwhile, had time to script his denial about the discrimination drama and the no-singles policy. Seeing an educational moment, our protagonist decided to dish out some real-life consequences. He gave his brother a 3-month notice, which, with leave days added, magically shrank to just 1 month. The waiters caught stirring the pot got a written warning. At an all-staff meeting, he laid down the law, no discrimination, or it's the exit door for you. And to keep everyone on their toes, he mentioned something about mystery diners and signed everyone up for mandatory customer service boot camp. To patch things up, Captain apologized to Tony and promised a personal sorry to Diane, Faith, and Alice, throwing in 4 free meals each and a little cash bonus. The news made the rounds on their social media, setting the stage for a Friday evening recon mission at the restaurant. Meanwhile, Tony finally got through to his kids in the States, thanks to some legal wrangling. They spilled their hearts about wanting to live with him, but he encouraged them to stick it out with Mom for now, promising more calls in the future. Just a typical Thursday in Tony's world, followed by a casual pre-dinner coffee session with the ladies on Friday, perfectly setting the stage for their undercover dinner mission. They trekked to the restaurant, a brisk 15-minute walk. Upon arrival, a perky waitress popped over, giving them the classic choice, bar or straight to dining? Diane opted for the latter with a polite, "We'll head to the restaurant, please." After escorting them to a table and distributing menus, they ordered drinks and promised to signal when their food choices were ready. The drinks arrived with a breezy enjoy from the waitress, who then left them to their deliberations. They couldn't help but notice the staff casting curious glances their way, quickly looking away whenever eye contact was made. Half an hour later, Tony, Brian, and Robert joined, and after a round of drinks, they placed their dinner orders. Captain made his entrance, having spotted them on CCTV. After doling out apologies to the ladies, he announced his new HQ would be right there in the restaurant trenches. He floated the offer of free dinners their way before mingling with other patrons. "My niece is tying the knot next weekend, Guerrero on the horizon," Tony chirped, extending an invite. The ladies were all in. Guerreros were the highlight reel of social gatherings. Thank you for watching. Please remember to subscribe, like, share and comment. See you next week on Wednesday for the next episode.